Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. Today, I have the opportunity to talk to Uneeb Khan, who I met at a TED Talk audition. I sat in the audience with my friend Jen Dalton in awe as Uneeb shared his experience that he had with a good friend of his. Uneeb is a pre-construction manager up in New Jersey. So he's a business guy like you and me, but he has a story to share, and I really want him to impart that because I think it's something that will stay with you for the rest of your life. Uneeb, thank you for being on the show.
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. This is amazing.
Oh, this is a gift to me because ever since I saw you on stage, I wanted to give the world the gift of your story and your lessons. So tell me, how did you come to put together that particular talk? Tell us the story that led up to it, and then we'll talk about the lessons that you learned.
You know, it's very out of the blue. I just didn't know. I saw on Facebook an audition for a TED Talk, and you know what? Everyone tells me that I have this story because I've told this story to a bunch of my friends. You know, I'm always trying to encourage them, and they were like, "This needs to be on a stage or something." So I decided to go and audition for this TED Talk, and I kind of just basically just wanted to tell my story. You know, I didn't really have anything planned. I just this is the story that I have. This is what I want to share. And I went up there and I did that. And it was really easy for me because I feel like when you speak from the heart, the words kind of find you, right? So it was very something personal to me. And I was able to easily go up to the stage and talk about it. I think if I had to talk about anything else, I would have been a complete nervous wreck. But since this topic, it's so dear to me, I was able to do it pretty easily.
Out of the 20 speakers, I thought you were the one who should have gotten the shot. So someday people are going to see you on a TED stage with this story. So tell us the story.
So, I was pretty much the kind of, person whose parents are like immigrants. They come to this country and they work really hard and they struggle and they believe that, hey, that's just the way it is. You work twice as hard and get half the credit, and that's just what you got to do. So our parents were in that mode. But when it comes down to us, what that does is really risk us from taking risk, basically. We're not too risky when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I was all about work, 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 work. Like the Rihanna song, it's just like that.
Every one of my friends who come from immigrant families are saying, you have a choice. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer.
Oh, exactly.
But you're totally a choice.
Yeah.
And so you're an electrical engineer by trade.
Right. So I'm an electrical engineer by trade. And luckily, I got to do this and get out a little bit of my creative side and stuff. So I was all about this, and I would never go out and hang with my friends. My friend, Chad, he would do these 40-mile bike rides. He would go on these hiking trips. He would go camping, all of these amazing things. And I would always be too busy because I have so much invested in work. I wanted to get somewhere with my career, and I wasn't really getting anywhere, but I couldn't understand why. So, I did this for such a long time. And the last time I hung out with Chad, we went on a hike. It's called the Devil's Path in the Catskills. And it's pretty tough. It's about 26 miles. And I was very unprepared for it. So what happened was, I was very unprepared. I grew up in Newark. So I'm a little bit of the urban city. So I wore Timberland boots and really nice clothes. And I thought I would take those hiking. Oh my God, that was a mistake. So after the first day, I think we hiked for maybe 7-8 hours. I had blisters on my feet. I was dying. I was like, I can't do this for another 2 days. So I told my friend Chad I couldn't do it. And he was like, all right, you know what? It's fine. As long as we get this hike done before we die, it'll be okay. He's like, next time we'll train you. You'll be so good you can climb Kilimanjaro. And I was like, yeah, sure, right? And I just wanted him to shut up and take me home. I just really all I cared about. And unfortunately, Chad wasn't able to keep that promise. He had passed away almost a month later in a motorcycle accident. And that was really tough.
So wait a second. You finally went on a hike with your friend. He told you that we have a bucket list of things to do.
Right.
And you had been really busy at work and really didn't partake for a long time. And then he died a month later.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And I felt a lot of grief, right? Because I'm the reason he never got to finish that hike. It was all my fault. I'm the one that made him turn around.
Mm.
And that stayed with me for a long time. I was really grief stricken, you know, and I had so much guilt over this, just ridiculous amount of guilt. And I just really had a hard time dealing with this. So I started talking to people, and someone told me something about something called instrumental grief. And instrumental grief is, people consider it a more manly or masculine way of grieving. It's basically you take your grief and you turn it into something tangible or physical, right? Some people do like a race in honor of somebody who passed away, or they'll build a box and have that person's name on it and put like pictures of them. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna do that hike. So that was the first thing that I wanted to do. So I got my friends together, the same people who came with me the first time. We took Chad's backpack so that he was there with us, and we were able to complete this hike. And I don't know what happened, but as soon as I got out from the hike, I was a changed person. The feeling that I got, because I was not feeling anything for a long time, I was numb. And then when I finished this hike, this new feeling came over me, like I can do anything in the world. So I thought, why stop there? So I started making a whole list of things to do to honor my friend Chad. And it was basically just a way to help me grieve. And I thought, man, other people can do this too, right? People have lost people in their lives, and they can make a list for someone that passed away in their life. And they can just, you know, because when you have an emotional attachment to these goals, that's when you're really, really motivated, you know? That's where procrastination can't win. So I started doing this, and amazing things started happening to me. Like, I was in my career, I was not acknowledged for maybe 8 years. I was just an engineer sitting in my cubicle, doing my work. No one ever noticed me. No one ever said, great job. I just, you know, was doing the average thing. And then when I started doing this, people started noticing me. Like, I was developing leadership skills that I never had before just because I was doing all these things outside. It just made me so much more confident. And it's very much like a video game. If you play like a video game and you try to go fight the boss, you're going to lose. That's how the game is built. But if you go on a bunch of side quests, you know, you get enough energy, you rack up experience points, you get the right tools and the right weapons, then beating the boss is really easy. And that's how your career works too. So I started doing all these things on my list, and I was developing skills I didn't know I was learning. Kind of like in The Karate Kid when Daniel-san is doing wax on, wax off. Like, he thinks he's just waxing a car, but he's actually learning a defense move, a kata. And it felt just like that. I was like, oh my God, all these amazing things started happening. And not only was I developing these skills, but something like, I don't want to say divine, but something like serendipitous was happening. It was like the movie Slumdog Millionaire. If you watch the movie Slumdog Millionaire, have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
It's a good movie, right? It's about a guy who goes on a game show. He goes on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he wins it. But not because he's smart, not because he's educated. It just happens that the things he had done in his life just happened to coincide with the questions that he was asked. It's like the butterfly effect, the chaos theory. These are like real, live, actual theories that people have. And I noticed all these things started happening. I started doing all these things in my personal life, and they started bleeding into my career. And before I knew it, I got Employee of the Month twice in 1 year. I got Employee of the Year, and they asked me to do some teaching. So I got a teaching certificate award. I got a leadership award. I got put in charge of putting a national pre-construction conference together. I started getting all these responsibilities because they saw me as someone who's not just an engineer, someone who's more than that. And they saw that not because of the stuff that I was doing at work, but the stuff that I was doing in my personal life. Like, they would ask me, oh, where did you go? And I would say, I've been to Antarctica, or I went to run with the bulls. These are the kind of things that they were like, whoa, this guy's really interesting. And
I saw a video of you in an anti-gravity chamber, and I'm dying to ask you about that, but I'll do that after the show.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you about that. That was insane. That was really coul.
So what I'd like to do is from the audience, the highlighter moment here is that before Chad's passing and before you took that hike, your belief was work, work, work. The way to get ahead is to focus maniacally on your career.
Keep your head down, work hard.
And that's what I thought. And what you learned was?
It's really the opposite. You work on your personal life, do the things you're passionate about, and your career will grow organically. It's weird, it's counterintuitive, but it works. I've showed my friends it worked for them. It's really weird, but it works, man.
So it's not just a life coach remedy for people. You put this to the test, and you
Oh,
saw
absolutely.
that by following your passions, by getting your blood going, and getting your fascination with life going in your personal life, your career took off.
Right. And the thing is, like, this is different than a New Year's resolution or a bucket list, right? Because a bucket list and New Year's resolution, like a bucket list itself, you're picking all of these crazy things, like a marathon, visit the Great Wall of China. These are huge goals that you're probably going to get to do maybe one or two of them in a lifetime. The chat list is like smaller, feasible, strategic goals. So I got to teach people, like, okay, that's not the exact kind of goal you want here. You want something that you can do on a weekend. You want it, and there's categories to these goals too.
So
And that's
can you go specifically? Can you now tell people what Chad's list is? That this
yeah, yeah.
thing that you
So
devise for
basically,
people?
I figured out is that, if you go to the gym and you do a bunch of random exercises, you don't see a lot of growth, right? But if you have a plan and you know how to measure your reps and how to time your mile, that's when you see growth. And career growth works the same way. So when I started doing stuff on my list, I noticed certain categories would have a much greater effect on some of the serendipitous things that happen in your life. So yeah, I can share that with you. So I can share that with you right now.
All right. So if you're driving, listen and come back to this and write it down. It'll be in the show notes. But if you're at your desk, get a pen and piece of paper out, because this is absolutely life changing. Go ahead.
All right. So there's about 5 categories in the chat list. So the first category is fear. You want to do something that inspires fear, right? Because people think of fear as a weakness, but fear is literally the closest thing we have to a superpower. If you think about it, what happens when we're afraid, right? We're faster than we've ever been before. We're stronger than we've ever been before. There's more oxygen going into our brain, making us think faster, slowing down time. These are the things that happen when we engage in fear. The other thing that happens is that we freeze. So what you do is you want to kind of like desensitize yourself to a little bit of this fear, so that instead of freezing, only the good stuff is happening. And you get all that energy and all that fear, and you can turn it into enthusiasm. And an example of that would be like the TED Talk. Like, I have a crippling fear of public speaking. And it's mostly because I stutter, I have a lisp, and when I was young, I had an accent that even my teachers made fun of. So, look at me now, Miss Ham.
You're such an engaging speaker, and so articulate and so authentic and moving. So back to this list. So this is something each year you pick these categories and pick something doable in each one of these categories. And the first one is do something that you're afraid of, so that you can
Right.
get your nervous system used to being in situations that you're afraid of and turn that to exhilaration. So that's number one.
Exactly. And I've talked to friends, and their thing isn't something like, jump out of a plane or public speaking. Some of them have something as simple as asking out a girl they like. And rejection is one of the biggest things about fear, right? Fear of rejection is huge. So what I ask them to do is every day kind of just, do something that you think people will reject you, that you don't really care about, but you'll probably get rejected for it. And what happens is that desensitizes you to getting rejected. So if you have things on this list and you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to ask a flight attendant to let me make the announcement today. They'll probably say no, but you asked and you got that fear of rejection a little bit out, So something like that is really cool. And so fear kind of does that to you. It kind of makes you it builds courage. You don't build courage before you do something you're scared of. You do what you're scared of first, and you get the courage after. That's how it works.
Huge, huge. All right, what's number 2?
So number 2, this one shouldn't be a surprise to everybody, but you want to do something that involves learning, right? Learning is always important about self-development. So, and it doesn't have to be something you need to master at. You just need to know something just a little bit, whether it's learn a few chords on the guitar, learn about a subject, anything you want. Because what that does, it kind of makes you dangerous in conversation. You can talk a little bit about everything. You can talk about The Bachelor, or you can talk about simulation theory. Just learn a little bit about it so you can basically talk to any kind of people about anything. And when you're learning, you're just developing skills that you'll have, and you never know when they might come useful.
Oh.
So learning is always important, and it's not something like, oh, I got to master French. I have to master how to do this. Just learn a little bit of it, and you'll enjoy it. It'll help your development, and you don't understand it, but it really helps you in learning other stuff. If you learn stuff every year, you kind of get used to that feeling and that rhythm of learning. And whenever there's stuff coming up at work that you need to learn, you use that same skill, that same cognitive brain power, and it does the same thing for you.
Brilliant. So category 3.
So category 3 shouldn't surprise people, but you want to do something that involves helping people or charity. Now, for me, this is big because my friend Chad was a volunteer EMT. And I believe that when the world loses a good person, it's up to the rest of us to pick up the slack. And that's what I wanted to do. And one of the best stories that Chad told me, his favorite story, he has 2 favorite stories when he was a volunteer EMT. One was that he saved a baby's life, which was amazing. Second was that he told me he stopped somebody from committing suicide. And that always stuck with me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go become a volunteer at a suicide hotline. So I signed up, I took a 12-week class, I paid money, and I became a listener at a suicide contact. And, I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a good thing. I'm going to get some brownie points, from the big man upstairs or whatever you believe in. And that'll be great, and I'll also get to honor Chad. But what I didn't understand was all of the amazing things I was going to learn at this charity and all the amazing people I was going to meet at this charity. Like, I learned to really empathize with people, how to talk to people on the phone when they're in a crisis, which is really important in management. And I learned how to listen to people, which is also very important in management. People don't know how to listen. They're just quiet long enough so that other person can stop talking and they can say what they were going to say the whole time anyway. They're just sitting there waiting, okay, you can stop and I'm going to say this, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say this. But what I really learned is how to listen and reflect people's feelings and emotions and empathy. And I can't tell you how useful that is as a manager and just in general. You learn that skill. And that's something that I didn't expect that I would learn. And all the charities that I've done, I've taken something away from it, whether it was volunteering at volunteering at a soup kitchen. That's something that I was really nervous about. I didn't know what to do. And then when I went there, they told me what to do. I got really used to that feeling. And now whenever I get put on a new project and I don't know anything, I know how to go about and do it. I know that if you make a mistake here and there, it's not the end of the world, So these were some cool things that I was learning when I was at the soup kitchen. And it also taught me not to judge people when I was there too. It was really cool. So these are the kind of things that I like to do. The charity is definitely one of them.
And so category 4.
So the next one is my favorite. All right, so this one is a little out there. The next category is you want to do something that the 8-year-old version of you would appreciate or be proud of. Now, this is something that I just stumbled across, and I'm probably the only, I don't know if there's any other thing out there that talks about this, but I did some research, and they say nostalgia is one of the strongest links to our happiness. When you think about it, all these movies that come out, they're selling these movies just to get money from our nostalgia. Some of these movies aren't great. They just oh, you know what? The 80s were great. There's all these toys from the 80s. Let's make another Transformer movie every 5 years. Things like that have, people know that nostalgia is a link to our happiness. And there studies have been done that show that nostalgia can be used to, help anxiety, help depression, because what it does is that it reminds us of a time before 401k and politics and all the stuff that we're going through right now. No matter how jaded we become, deep down, we're still that kid. We're still that kid playing tag with his cousins in the yard. We're still our mom and dad's son. We're still that person deep down inside. And it's a way to help us, connect with that inner child. And
it's funny. It's funny. I hated my childhood and growing up where I did, and I still love 70s music, and that still is nostalgic. So I still have that euphoric feeling, even though I didn't have the childhood that you're describing.
Exactly. So, and that's true. You don't have to have a great childhood. My childhood was growing up in the projects, right? I grew up in the projects, and I actually was at 8-year-old. I was stabbed when I was 8 years old. It was traumatic. I think the hospital, everything, and so I didn't have the greatest childhood either. But there are things I remember from my childhood that are so huge. One example would be, I'm a big Batman fan. I used to read the comics, I used to love the cartoons. I used to sit down in front of my TV and just watch Batman for hours. Batman, the animated series, just loved it. And if I went back in time and I told the 8-year-old version of me that I got to work on the World Trade Center and, it's the most important building in the world and I got to work on it, that 8-year-old would be like, meh, who cares, right? But if I told that 8-year-old that I was in a Batman movie, that I was in The Dark Knight Rises, he would crap his pants. Like, he literally would freak out. And like, as proud as I am of working on the Freedom Tower, like the fact that I was an extra in a Batman movie and I was 5 feet away from Batman and Bane, like I just think about that 8-year-old kid. How happy would this make him? And it's one of those things that like whenever I'm down, whenever I'm upset, I think about the fact that I was in this movie and how happy that 8-year-old version of me, and just the endorphins kick in. I'm just like, you know what, man? Life, I've had a decent life. You know, I did this. This was amazing. Like I made that 8-year-old proud.
That is, when I tell people about Chad's List and I tell them about, do something the 8-year-old would just love, they all
Yeah,
light up. Everybody lights up. So that's really that's a category that gets people's juices going. So what's
yeah.
category 5?
So category 5 is another one that people talk about a lot, right? It's travel. Traveling is very important, right? And it doesn't have to be somewhere expensive, right? Like everyone's like, oh yeah, sure, that's some privileged stuff to say that you can travel here and there, but you can go to a part of town you've never been to before. There's places that you can like visit that are free, and like even in Newark, there's like abandoned train stations and stuff that I took my friends to, and we took photographs there. And the way the light comes in inside the abandoned place is amazing. Really cool places. But the best thing about traveling is you want to travel where there's like different types of people, whether it's people from a different type of neighborhood, different type of culture, even different type of like class or monetary. It doesn't really matter. But what traveling does is that when you travel, it leads to understanding, and understanding leads to appreciation, and appreciation leads to love, and love will eventually lead to peace. And we need that now in this country more than ever. And I
That's
think
such
that's
a
very, very important.
Such a beautiful concept. Well, when you were on the stage, when we shared the stage with a gentleman who was a security expert, so he basically engaged with terrorists and
Right.
guerrilla warfare and all the dangers around the world. And he said he started out his talk the same way, saying, if you want to alleviate some of the problems in the world, travel, learn other cultures, don't be so
Absolutely.
insular into what. So that complemented what you had to say about that also.
Yeah. And one of the great quotes that he said when he started his thing was the quote was, "Don't tell me how educated you are. Tell me how well you've traveled," by the Prophet Muhammad. And I thought that was an amazing way to start it. That was like, I was like, wow, what a great concept. What a great quote. And I thought that was really good too.
Yeah, that was a good day. So what we got? So out of the tragedy with Chad, and it just chokes me up every time I think about that for you, is this joyous life that you're sharing with people, and the categories. And again, I wrote an article saying why New Year's resolutions are a lie. This is different than resolutions. This is different than bucket list stuff.
Absolutely.
This is about engaging in your life. So doing something that engages your fear so that your nervous system can learn to do things that you're afraid of and turn that into exhilaration. Go learn
Yeah.
something. Category 2, do something that's educational to yourself. Then engage in charity. Category 3, do something for someone else. You'll get way more back than you ever give to someone else.
Hmm.
And then for category 4, do something the 8-year-old would love. For me, swimming with dolphins was mine. I did that,
Amazing.
that was something I dreamed of my whole entire life. And then 5, travel.
Right.
Go see
And
the world.
the great thing about travel is, I'm gonna share. Let me share one more story about travel with you. So one of the things, like, I believe that like travel isn't a luxury, like it's a responsibility, because
Mm.
you go out and learn all this stuff. And one of the great things that happened when I traveled, like one of the things was I went to Antarctica, and when I went to Antarctica, I told some coworkers about it. And there were some salespeople, they were talking to some clients, and they mentioned that they have someone who went to Antarctica. So that guy, his son's class was learning about Antarctica. So he asked if I would like to go in and talk to the class about it. And when I went there, the class was blown away. The teachers loved it. The students loved it. The guy was so happy that he went out of his way to make sure we had every advantage possible to win the next bid on that project. And we did. And that's just like one example of like how something from this list, from my personal goals, affected my career. Like I have enough of these to fill in an entire book. There's so many. Like we don't have enough time to go through all of the things that I've done in my personal goals that bled into my career somehow. But it's amazing.
Uneeb, if I have anything to do with it, you will have plenty of time to share these stories on podcasts and videos and on a TED Talk stage. What you've learned, your spirit is so infectious that I could not wait to wrangle this and get this recorded for posterity.
Yeah.
So tell me,
Well,
I know you like. Go
the best
ahead.
thing about this, I just want to say, is that so like there is no negative part of this, because say it doesn't work out, right? Say like all of these things you're doing on your personal goal don't help your career at all. The worst thing that happened is you accidentally lived your life to the fullest, and that's not a bad problem to have, right?
You accidentally lived your life to the fullest.
Yeah.
That is priceless. I was going to ask you,
People
what would
always
you like to
say,
leave people with? And
yeah,
that's a good one.
yeah. And people always say it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, why would people want to know us? Because we're interesting. And how do we become interesting? By doing things that we're passionate about.
No question whatsoever. So tell me, besides crushing it at your job and building big, beautiful buildings, what are your next big projects?
All right, so I have a bunch of projects. So one of my things was I was going to try to run a marathon this year. So I already I tried to enter the New York City Marathon, and I've been training for that. So that's good. The other thing is I'm going to do something called air walking, which is you get on one of those old school propeller planes, you get out of your seat and walk onto the wing of the plane while it's in the air. So that's going to
Dude,
be
you're
my
taking
fear
this
section.
seriously.
Yeah, that's going
Is
to be
that the
amazing.
8-year-old, or is that fear? Or are you putting them
That's fear.
together?
Oh, that's definitely fear. Yeah, so that'll be cool. And then for learning, I decided to learn guitar this year, so I'm going to learn a little bit of guitar. And for charity, I definitely want to be able to rack up a certain amount of hours and actually do a podcast on mental health. So since I've been doing the, not a podcast, more like a YouTube thing on mental health, because I've been working at the suicide hotline for a long time, and there's a lot of things about suicide hotline that people don't know about. Like, you don't have to be suicidal to call. You can just be feeling down. That's why they call them crisis hotline now and not suicide hotline.
Wow,
Suicide
that's
hotline are not even in the name. It's 1-800-273-TALK. People can talk about anything that they're worried about, you know? Someone gets pregnant, they want to talk about it. School kids. I had someone call in who's 9 years old, right? People bullying him. Like, people can talk about anything. You don't have to be at the point of suicide. And I've been talking to people and telling people, like, oh, you know what? I think I know of someone who's depressed. And I said, you know what? These are the things that you want to do. These are the things you don't want to do. You know, you don't want to give them sympathy. You want to give them empathy. So these are the things that I've learned in the class. And I kind of want to put that out there and do like a little, that'll be my charity. Do a little bit of like a YouTube clip or an Instagram thing to help people with that. I think that'll be really good.
So in an earlier podcast, I interviewed a young man named Paul McGregor, who lives in the UK, whose father committed suicide, and he's dedicated his life to talking about mental health issues and
Yeah,
challenges. I will connect you with him, and
absolutely.
I cannot wait to see the product of what you guys put together. Maybe we'll even get you back together on this podcast. Uneeb,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on the and sharing your gold with us and your gifts. We will put your Instagram and your contact information in the show notes. To
Great.
everybody else, thank you for listening. I hope you wrote down some of the gold that Uneeb shared with us. And if you like the podcast, please write a comment, rate us, share us, and please have a great rest of the day. I love you. Take care.
Thanks. Thanks, guys.